T1V2. This is like the 10,000 mile update here, so we'll take a look at the system, how it's holding up, and see if any of the initial recommendations have changed. Welcome to Machines and More. A few case reviews are inbound, but let's just do a quick chat here about the T1V2 and get a longer term check-in. About a year ago, we did an extensive series on this case, and I've been using this particular custom loop build for a while now, I think about a year. So just a quick update here for those of you that are curious. I did a few different builds in this, and I ended on this custom loop. Of course, I will leave all the components linked down below, but just to recap, if this your first time seeing it, the single rad build features the i7 12700K with ASUS's B660 ITX board, and it is paired with AMD's 6800 XT, 38 gigs of DDR5 RAM. Power supply is Lee's SP850. Cooling parts here are ModUltra's Lobo combo CPU pump block, and over the GPU is an Alpha Cool block. Tubing here is EK's Zero Maintenance Tubing, or ZMT, with Phanteks fittings. So first off, the loop itself has held up quite well. No leaks or incidents. In fact, it really hasn't required much maintenance other than, after setting it up for another week or so, the last few air bubbles purged out into that flow indicator where I wanted it to go. So all I had to do was just turn it upside down, top it off, seal it back up. All good. So it does seem like the way that I had intended the system to be topped off and filled up was working quite well. One tip is that if you move your case around a lot like I do, now's a good time to give all the screws on the case a good once over, tighten them up if needed. The ModUltra block is also working well. It looks great still. The heatsink, it's working to keep the DDC pump cooled. No problems with the DDC pump at this point. And cooling performance is absolutely adequate. When I tested it, the CPU package temp delta for the 12700K over the coolant temp for a CPU render was about 53 to 54 degrees. In other words, it was keeping the CPU at 85 to 86 degrees when the coolant temp was 32 degrees. So at this point, it's still performing similarly. Of course, the ambient temps are naturally a bit higher during the summer in my operating environment, but just looking at the delta here, it is topping out at around 91 degrees with a package power of 173 watts, and that is with the coolant at 39 degrees. So more or less, it's the same performance. Maybe it's just a tad better delta than before, but I'm not expecting any material change here. But, good to see it's holding up more or less the same. Can you get a bit better performance with a dedicated block and pump? I think empirically, yes. But this, is what you need to make it work in the system like this. GPU block, though, I think something is up with it. The temps, they're not terrible, but it is a bit odd compared to my initial testing when I first set it up. Previously, during gaming, it was coming in at about 26 degrees over the coolant temp, and that was without an undervolt, running at right around 240 watts board power. Right now, it's more like 31 degrees of a delta with an undervolt, so I'm going to pull it and check it. Guessing the contact on the die, maybe it's not as good as when it first was first set up. Perhaps a few screws need tightening, something like that. So that kind of stuff can happen. I think the thermal paste it's probably intact, but we'll see with the mounting pressure. During the summer months, the fans do need to go a little bit faster. The Noctua NFA 12x25s has a gentle noise profile even at max, but during gaming, I am letting these get to the maximum just to keep the coolant at around 42, 43 degrees. I've mainly been playing AoE 4 lately. During gaming, the 12700K is pulling around 60 watts. GPU with the undervolt is about 200 watts total board power. So this type of combo, it's absolutely still at the higher end of what a single slim rad like the TX240 plus 2 fans is capable of. With the right components, you could do 2 rads in here, but if you're concerned about that, then I would probably just swap the card out to something slightly lower powered and balance that way. What else? The board. I still think the motherboard is one of the better budget boards now, even though it has been replaced in the lineup by the ASUS B760 ITX now. But absolutely no problems with the B660. The power supply has also been dependable. The fan rarely spins up with gaming levels of power draw. Every now and then it will spin up though, so when the fan does spin up, you will hear it. It's quite abrupt, so that's a drawback of this type of fanless mode sometimes. You just get that spike when the thermals or the power draw triggers it. It's okay, it does the job, and it looks pretty good too. So overall, after the extended test period, the case has still been great. I absolutely love this case, and it still gets a very strong recommendation. The design of the case means that it is still quite easy for long-term maintenance and post-build work. I did swap out the RAM kit, for example, just to try this Corsair kit out, and made it easier because the brace just comes off, and then I could kind of shift things around to get to the RAM kit. Still wasn't necessarily easy with the tubing there, but I managed to make it work, and it would have been impossible with the brace there. So if I was to change one thing about this build, unless I was able to add another rad, perhaps I would have gone with a slightly lower powered GPU just to keep the noise manageable in the hotter months with higher ambient temps. But the truth of the matter is, since we are limited to a single rad here, in terms of the performance, you definitely would be better off air cooling the GPU with its stock, the original cooler, and then only looping in the CPU or just running the CPU on an AIO. But custom loops, they're not always about raw performance, right? So what's next for this build? Well, I'm going to check the block, make sure it's in order first, but the parts in here, they're going to migrate over to a new case that I'll be reviewing soon, and that will hopefully be a dual rad build, which will be perfect for this type of power level. I'm also going to be migrating the Dan A4H2O 7700X 3070 build over and try that in the T1 reference with a 280. So anyhow, at least for now, I am going to start taking this one down. So, stay tuned for that next case. Not so subtle hint, if you can figure it out. But yeah, this T1V2 has been an absolute great case. Hopefully those of you that have it are enjoying it too. They're easier to get now, so if you're interested, now's a pretty good time to go for it. So please give a like, subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching.